Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth episode of Life with New Normal webinar series organized by Miloda Academy of Financial Studies. The webinar aims at raising awareness on the impact of COVID-19 and to identify individual responsibilities to face the new normal with confidence. In today's episode, we will be exploring the topic Reviving the Economy to Face the New Normal with Confidence. I would like to welcome on board and introduce Mrs. 𝐂𝐜𝐴𝐳𝐷𝐼𝐻 as the moderator to the webinar. Ms. 𝐂𝐜𝐴𝐳𝐷𝐼𝐻 is the Global Chairperson of Women in Logistics and Transport. She was the former Director of Customer Service, Unilever Sri Lanka, and the first female Director for Supply Chain and the first Global Lead Auditor appointed from South Asia in Unilever. She is currently a board member of Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce and an independent director for a few organizations. She is also a consultant and a visiting lecturer for many universities locally and internationally, and a senior consultant to our institution as well. Before we begin, I'd like to draw the attention of the audience to the chat box in the Zoom application. If anyone would like to ask any question, please do so from there. Madam, I cordially invite you to take on the session and introduce our distinguished panelists to the audience.
Okay, thank you very much, Mihimali. I think this is the fourth webinar in the series Life with New Normal that Miloda has organized. And I'm really happy to welcome the eminent panelists, the three panelists. Bit of house rules. I mean, I'm reiterating what Mihimali also mentioned. I would urge all of you to mute your mics and switch off your video except for the panelists. And then if you have any questions to ask, please type it into the chat, and you can specifically mention the question is, you can specifically direct the question to a particular panelist, or you can ask a general question. So keep sending in your questions, and when we finish the sessions, the first round, and we will be coming back to your questions as well. So today we have a very eminent, two eminent panelists and a young panelist today as well. And our theme today is reviving the economy to face the new normal. As you know, COVID has impacted all our lives and livelihoods, and economy, not only in Sri Lanka, globally has got severely impacted. So what is in store for us, and how are we going to overcome these challenges that have come our way? So there are no better people than the two specialists that we have today. I'll first start introducing the first panelist, Professor Lakshman R. Vatawala, and he needs no introduction, but formality's sake, I'll introduce him. Professor Vatawala is a Chartered Global Management Accountant and a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountant of UK. He's a past president of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, board member of South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA, and founder president of many associations in Sri Lanka, including CMA. Professor Vatawala has received national honors, Sri Lanka Sikhamani, conferred for distinguished services from His Excellency the President of Sri Lanka, in addition to receiving the CMA Sri Lanka Lifetime Achievement Award for outstanding services for the accounting profession in 2018. So there are many achievements of his. So for the time being, I'll just mention this, and as I mentioned, he needs no introduction. as well. So thank you, Professor Vatawala, for agreeing to be part of this panel. Next, I would again, another person who needs no introduction, Dr. 𝐷𝐤𝐴 𝐕𝐺𝐵𝐺𝐺. He is a member of the Board of Studies, Faculty of Graduate Studies at University of Sri Jawadanapura. He was a former central bank deputy governor and consultant on banking, finance, and economics. And he's the president of BMS, and he's also a regular independent writer, especially to Daily FT on economics. And he's a poet, novelist, and a story writer. So thank you, Dr. Vijayawardena, for agreeing to be at this panel today. And we have a young medical professional today, joining us today from the Health Promotion Bureau. He's Dr. Ashan Patirana. He's the Registrar in Community Medicine of Health Promotion Bureau of Ministry of Health. He holds an MBBS from University of Faculty of Medicine from University of Colombo. And also he holds a master's in community medicine from Postgraduate Institute of Management, University of Colombo. So now we will, the first round is we will get all the three panelists to share their thoughts on the topic in their respective specialized areas. So I'll start off with Professor Vatawala. Professor Vatawala, COVID, as I mentioned to you, COVID impacted our lives and livelihoods and disrupted our economy. Mostly impacted were the SME businesses. I know you, soon after COVID pandemic struck us, you actually took your initiative to set up the SME task force, and mostly impacted in the country were the SME businesses. Could you please shed some light on the impact of COVID to the SMEs and the steps already taken to revive them? Over to you, Professor. Unmute, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ghani. I'm indeed thankful to Miloda, the Academy of Financial Studies, and also to you for inviting me for this important seminar that we are having today. As you know, everyone has been really affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, but of course the SME sector, as you know, has been quite badly affected. And as what we have done is now actually I am currently the president of the Institute of Certified Management Accountants, of course, but we have before that, of course, with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. So what we are now, what we have done is we've got all these, some of the professional bodies, we've got some of the bankers, and we've also got the various institutions that are involved in this, and to help us in this SME, which we started last year, maybe in about April. And this has been going on, and we've also conducted many sort of seminars and conferences, some of them maybe in physical format, but some mainly on the using the webinar and the online format. Now, you all know that SME is a very, very important sector in our entire economy, where 52% of the GDP, 45% of the total employment, making up more than 75% of the total number of enterprises are coming in this sector. And even if you look at the SME sector, there is what is called the micro sector, which is also quite large. Maybe the micro is about 44%, the large about 25%, the small about 18%, and the medium about 13%. Now, from our side, of course, as you know, the main problems initially were the problems of finance, of getting the working capital and getting them into order. Of course, the government has helped them quite a lot in this regard. And in this matter, we also, because we had all the banks and they have been helping in the event if there were any problems, because what we did was we had, through the chambers of commerce, we had all the major chambers also involved, where we were able to channel any of their investors or SMEs who had any problems to the respective banks. But we really came up with a very good suggestion, that was to set up the SME Credit Guarantee Institution. Now, I think this was really one of the most important things. This is also maybe really backed by the Asian Development Bank, because they have already have this project in the pipeline. Then through the Ministry of Industries, we submitted a cabinet paper, and now it is with the Ministry of Finance. And I think that very soon that they will get this going. If this is there, this will help a lot of the people, because one of the problems with the SME sector is that they do not have the collateral. So with this SME credit guarantee institution coming into force, we feel that that will help these people, plus also the new entrepreneurs. Some of them are really not having any sort of assets that they have, that they can give. So this is one area where we really have made an impact. And also the banks, the central bank, everyone, they have also given special loans at maybe up to about 25 million at 4% interest. Some of them are taking it, and of course the moratorium. But now we have to see whether they will be able to make a revival as a result of this pandemic. The other important thing that we did is that we found that our SME sector exports are very, very low. It's only about 5%. But whereas in other countries, it ranges from 25 to 40%, even in India and other countries, which is very much more. So what we did was, we have now set up, we have suggested what is called the export houses concept, which has now been sent to the Export Development Board, and they are now working on it to get this approval. That is to approve the export houses as a export organization. Because now currently, if you are a manufacturer and you export, then of course you are entitled to the export incentives or the reduction in the duty and others. But if in the case of the SMEs, the problem is that they are unable to get this, get bigger people to assist them. So if the export house concept comes in, then they will be able to help the small time people to maybe get their quality right, to tell them what has to be grown, how the packing has to be done. So all these things should be done. Plus also the EDB in this current budget has come up with what is called the TEEP scheme. The TEEP scheme, which will really help them to do it, but these people are unable to, maybe the small people are unable to do it. So if the export houses, the bigger person comes in and helps them, they can do it. So now the EDB is working on it, and I'm sure that they will be able to, they have given very, very maybe positive signs where this will be considered as an export organization, and they will be able to get the exports, and then the farmers and the industries that are supplying will be treated as indirect exporters. That's the other thing, because if you have an indirect exporter, then they will have the same benefits as an exporter. So this was very successful during the BOI time in starting the apparel industry. So we feel that this indirect exporter would be a very good thing. Then the other area was on the labor laws, you know, the recommendations on labor laws, because today a lot of them are having the problem. One thing is now with the current situation of the COVID pandemic, a lot of them are working from home. So then where the new rules and regulations have to come in order that they could benefit from that. Then there are some other people who have been laid off. Now that problem is also there. Now once they are laid off, if they are taken back, then what sort of maybe a way that the employers will have a lot of problems, back wages and other things coming in. But of course, they were also, the employers were given certain concessions where they were able to reduce the wages and these help, but also where the employees were able to get that. So these are a few of the things on the labor side that we look. Then of course, other one of course is the tax incentive. Now the government has already given some of the benefits to them on the tax area, and also on the VAT and the applicable, what is applicable. So these also another important area which has come in. So these are some of the new areas, but very, very important area we have to look now, because most of them have got the financing. It's the marketing area. Now the marketing is very, very important, both in the local aspect, because we've seen how the SMEs have been affected. Some of them not been able to sell their products, and also especially the agricultural people, where we find that there has to be proper planning, because otherwise what we will see is that there will be now, they are all talking of turmeric, now that everyone is growing that. You see, then what will happen is, if everyone is growing that, when the production comes in, then they will have the problem of selling it. Then the other thing is the processing of it. You see, you need the people to process. So we need the government also to come in, plus the private sector. But mainly the ministries have to play a role, because we have so many in the public sector that they are able to get these statistics and help them. And this will apply even for the paddy growing people, because if they grow the proper type of maybe rice that they have, and where they can get a higher price. So these are all matters that is really for the which are really the SME sector and individuals who are there. So we need to ensure that these things are done. So these are just a few other things that I didn't go to tell about the problems that they have, but the actions. Then the other most important thing is the capacity, maybe improving the capacities of the people. Now, one area that they have been very weak is the financial area. So we conducted a number of seminars, both online, then even on this current budget, where the tax people need, although everyone talks of a budget, where no one knows what is the benefit that they are getting, what is there in the budget. So we were able to have a number of seminars with the SME sector, both in English, Sinhalese, and also in Jaffna, which helped to disseminate what was there in the budget. So these are some of the things, but this capacity development, financial management has been very, very weak. So we have now taken action to see how this could be developed, because a lot of them are not maintaining the records. A lot of them are, that of course, maybe they think that if they maintain records, they have to pay taxes, which is really not correct, because most of these SMEs are not liable for tax. So these are, but if they have the records, then even the banks will be able to give more financing. So I think in a nutshell, I didn't go to talk of all problems, but what we have done, then we had this seminar in Hambantota. One of the more important things that happened was where we were able to get a lot of the people from the banks to come, and then the port people, they came forward to help them to identify products that could be given in the event for their, maybe when the ships come and others, so that they could identify supply. So these are also some of the things that we can do to help the SMEs.
So thank you very much, Professor. I think quite a comprehensive set of things that as part of the task force that you initiated among many professional bodies and all that. So I think what is important for us is to follow up and see the outcome of these initiatives. So let's discuss more in details. Now I will move on to Dr. W. Vijayawardena. Doctor, I know the virus has posed serious challenges in managing the economy and its growth. And it appears that it's not going to be an easy task, especially in our current situation in the country. So, but we know that we have to face this new reality head on. So, as a leading economist, we would like to hear your thoughts, the prescription or the recipe to revive the economy, which you always talk about in your articles, but you would like for the audience to understand your point of view and your recipe for reviving the economy. Yeah.
Thanks, Gani. And even before we had this COVID-19 pandemic, Sri Lanka's economy was not at its best position, and we had started a downward journey with respect to all the available macroeconomic variables. From around, say, 2013, and economic growth had been slowing down, government budget had been in a very fragile situation, public debt has been rising, our foreign reserves had been built completely by borrowing from outside, Sri Lanka rupee was under pressure for depreciation, and the credit growth had grown, and as a result, there were pressures for the inflation to rise. So all types of problems we had even before we had the COVID-19 pandemic. What has happened now is that with the COVID-19 pandemic and with the closure of the rest of the world to us, we have lost a valuable opportunity to revive the economy from that level. So what we have to do is we have to take a stock of the present position and then move forward. And in the case of the present position, we cannot say that we can be happy about the entire development that we are having, because the economic growth in 2020 is estimated to be in the negative range, even though the government thinks that it would be about, say, minus 1.6. All the independent analysts have come up with a number of, say, 6% negative growth in 2020, and it will be actually continued in 2021 and 22 as well. At the same time, our foreign reserve position had declined critically, and as at end of January, the foreign reserves of the central bank, the country's reserves, have fallen to 4.8 billion US dollars, of which only available liquid dollars had been about, say, 4.4 billion, because we had the gold balance of, say, 6 tons of gold, fine gold, and we cannot sell that in a hurry. So as a result, the liquid foreign exchange available to Sri Lanka is 4.4 billion, which we have to use in order to repay the foreign debt of both the government and the private sector, which amounts to about, say, 6 billion in the next 12-month period. So we don't have enough foreign exchange, and as a result, the rupee is under pressure for depreciation right now. So what we should do today is to, as Professor Lakshman Vatawala had very clearly mentioned, we have to revive the economy, and that needs immediate effects, then the medium to short-term effects, and also the long-term effects. So the immediate ones that we have to do is to, to make a turnaround of the downward spiral and start moving up. And for that purpose, what is necessary is, the most important requirement is, as Professor Lakshman Vatawala had very clearly identified, we have lots of products. Agriculture is, in good production, but the supply chain has been disrupted. So we have to build up the supply chain so that the farmers would be connected not only to markets, but also to the entrepreneurs who are actually processing the farm products for further products in Sri Lanka, so that there should be a connection between the markets as well as the entrepreneurs. Now, this turmeric issue is the most critical issue, and we had, for whatever the reason, the importation of turmeric had been banned. Immediately, I had expected both the Department of Agriculture and also the Ministry of Industries to take it over from the Ministry of Finance, and started working on the turmeric one, because the turmeric can be, if it can be grown, basically it can be grown as a garden product, as well as it can be grown as a farm product. So the Department of Agriculture, we have to come up with varieties, distribute the seedlings, and instruct the farmers how to they should farm it, then tackle the pest and other issues that might be affected. Then the Ministry of Industries will have to, Ministry of Trade and Industries will have to join in to take the harvest to the market as well as to process them. So that part had not happened. So as a result, Gayani, you would have noted the London Guardian newspaper ran a very important article on this turmeric, because in certain areas, they say that this is called yellow gold for Sri Lanka, because in Ampara district, they had cultivated a huge landscape of turmeric, but the farmers are unable to sell them, even though the open market price of powdered turmeric is about 12,000 rupees per kilogram. So those farmers cannot get even 250 rupees per raw kilogram in Ampara area, because they are the market, the supply chain has been disrupted. So that's why Professor Vatawala had very correctly identified, the economic management that we have to do today is not simply giving directions from the center. Economic management requires us to take action to overcome the deficiency that we have in the market system, and connect the product developers to the market as well as to the rest of the world. So those are the immediate things that we have to do: the restoration of the supply chain to the market as well as to industrialists. Then medium to a long term, we have a serious problem in Sri Lanka. That problem is called that we are trapped in, but it's known as this middle income trap. So what we mean by a middle income trap, Gayani, is that Sri Lanka will eternally remain as a middle income country without being able to move up to a rich country. So we have this particular problem. So the medium to long term strategies to be adopted by us to revive in the new normal should be to address this particular issue, and that issue requires us to introduce new technology, because only the countries with high technology that have been able to beat the middle income trap. Countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and also South Korea, which had very successfully beaten the middle income trap because they had high technology. How did they get high technology? Was that they got the technology being developed elsewhere to their countries through universities and research institutions, and also for indirect investment, while at the same time they encourage the local universities and research institutions to come up with local technologies. So with the combination of both, these countries were able to beat the middle income trap and elevate their economies to a rich country status within a matter of, say, one generation. One generation is normally about, say, 25 years. And Sri Lanka also has to do that. In this case, our problem is, again, it's actually a problem as well as an opportunity, Gayani, because Sri Lanka's high-tech exports is about, say, 1% of the total manufactured exports. Whereas countries like Vietnam, they have 40% high-tech exports. Even a country like, say, Philippines, it's about, say, 60%. So we have a long way to go, but that is not an impossible task. It may be difficult, but it's not an impossible task if we try to come up with this required technology. Now, for example, if we take this turmeric case again, now, turmeric is not just, as a curry powder. Turmeric has lots of ingredients that can be tapped for further production. I mean, the enzymes, the chemicals, various other things that, turmeric, antibacterial things. Now, they have to be processed and harnessed by using high technology. So, this is a matter for the universities which have these faculties of technology today, and the Industrial Technology Institute, which is being run by the government, and also the private institutions like our own BMS, Business Management School. We have a School of Science there. Our job has to develop the turmeric into a further processing and value addition form. So that should come from us. And after that, we can say, because as Professor Latol had said, if the turmeric output comes to the market and if the market prices crash, the farmers will again become bankrupt. And we have this problem with respect to vegetables, paddy, and so forth, because overproduction, normally we think that if we increase production, it will increase the farmer's income. But in Sri Lanka's case, since we didn't have any important mechanism to use these factors to harness it for further processing, what had happened is that the oversupply means the farmers could become bankrupt, and as a result, they have become a burden to the country rather than an asset to the country. So all these things have to be kept in mind, and I would like to very briefly mention about the current foreign debt problem of Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka government is unable to go to the international sovereign bond market because the bond prices have fallen drastically. And the two reports that have been issued today by the Standard Chartered Bank and the Barclays Bank, they have very categorically rated Sri Lanka's international sovereign bonds as underweight, which means Gayani, they have instructed the investors to get rid of them as soon as possible. So as a result, the price of $100 bond today is traded, say, at between, say, $58 and $74, which is at a high discount. And as a result, Sri Lanka government cannot go to the international sovereign bond market. So we have a huge problem of foreign exchange. So all these things have to be tackled by us immediately in order to revive the economy. So I will next time I will discuss the other matters also. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's quite a revelation. I think we need to really look at these, in bite-sized chunks. You need to look at the short-term issue, come out of it, medium, long-term. I think that's very important for us to understand. So thank you for those insights. Now we move on to Dr. Ashan. I think we are all in this situation because of this pandemic. So health status is directly actually linked to the economy. So we cannot run the economy. The health of the economy is totally dependent on the health of the society. So I mean, we hear a lot about the current COVID situation, and we see we are closely moving towards 100,000 cases now. We are in the 70,000, 76,000 or something, right? And then 433 deaths, which we didn't even foresee this in the first wave. And we also hear vaccination happening. So just give us a brief overview of the current situation, taking into consideration all these aspects for the benefit of the participants.
Thank you, Madam. So I think before we start off, so we have to look at this in terms of the economy. Right now, we discuss how it has badly affected the economy, and the whole idea of this presentation should be to understand how well we can place ourselves and to understand, okay, what would be the projections and how we should prepare in this time where everything is unpredictable. So before we move on to discuss what's happening here, it's nice to see the global trend, because what we have seen is usually the global trend follows. Like for us, it's about 2-3 months ahead. So if we see a decline in the cases in the global scenario, we would see a similar pattern. And if there's a peak, that will invariably come to us within the next few months. So the situation in the world has been improving drastically. So if you look at the WHO data for the weekly epidemiological reports, we have never seen a decline of this magnitude since the epidemic started. So the vaccine rollout started in Europe, in the US, and so many other countries. And with that, we have seen a massive drop of the number of cases coming up. If you look at the graph, so these are the good things. So let's talk about what's coming positive. So it's the 7th consecutive week that we are seeing a decline in the number of cases, and it looks like the trend is going to continue. And with that, we saw New Zealand and Australia going into a shutdown, which was quite alarming for people, because we saw New Zealand as the hallmark. But you have to understand there are different ways of managing this epidemic. So some countries are trying to maintain the zero patient order. So that's very difficult for a country with a high population density like ours, whereas in New Zealand and Australia, where the population is spread out and the density is quite low, it's actually possible to operate the economy under those circumstances. So it's a bit different. So moving on to Sri Lanka, I think the first thing to understand is how things worked out, because from the health perspective, it's important to establish the trust. Sometimes I think people have lost the trust due to some incidences that they have perceived, and people are questioning. So let's get things straight and to see how things started off. Originally in March last year, we started having the cases, and yeah, we had a small peak, but everything went into remission. And then again, back in October, we started having the second wave, as we call it. And then people had the doubt, okay, because of the elections and all these things, did we keep the numbers hidden, and was it spreading, and didn't we really want to make note of it? Well, that part, if you look at the science, the original Wuhan virus was found during the first few genomic sequencing. And then during the October, we actually found the D614G mutation. And I think Professor 𝐂𝐜𝐴 might have explained much better than this, that all the viruses that we found on the second wave were that D614G mutation. So it was actually an introduced one. So with that, we went on, and towards the beginning of this year, we started having a bit of a higher count in terms of cases. So that was attributed to the UK variant, as they call it, but I mean, it was detected in the UK, but nobody knows where it originated. So that's the B117 lineage. So with that, the thing that you need to understand is, yes, we do have it in Sri Lanka. We actually had a different variant with the similar characteristics, but now we have the UK strain as well. It is not more virulent than the current strain. It's just that it can spread faster. So that means the viral load is higher. If somebody is infected, they will be putting out more viruses into the environment. So the chances of it spreading is quite high. So with that situation, we have to understand, okay, what are the other strains that are coming out? So there's another B1351 that has been discussed about the South African strain. So that has its own characteristics. So let's not go there, because right now in Sri Lanka, luckily we don't have that. So the numbers, as Madam said, it's at 78,937 as of today morning, according to the epidemiology unit. And the things to note is, we are actually looking at this number as if like, okay, the number of cases is what determines everything. But if you look at the mortality rates, right, in Sri Lanka, the case fatality rate has been about 0.55%. So out of all people who have got the disease and who have got cured, the mortality rate is around 0.55. So we have to understand why did we get placed high in an Australian university ranking. Lately, I think a lot of people might have come across this rating where Sri Lanka was placed 10th in terms of managing the COVID. For us, it looks bad, right? Because we have gone through several phases, we have been seeing what's going on, people had issues about it. But if you really look at the number of deaths per million population, right? Sri Lanka has about 19. So, I mean, we are having quite a high number of cases, but that means that we are having about 19 deaths per million, whereas India had about 113. And the best case scenario is Singapore, where they have a large number of cases, but the deaths are, so per million, it's about 5, right? Whereas Australia has about 36, which is still higher than us. And in general, from the Southeast Asian region, it's about 100 and we are at 19. So for some reason, right, we are having a relatively lesser burden compared to the other countries in terms of deaths. So we've been managing the epidemic well in terms of handling the cases, but the overall trend has been going upwards until last week. So we have been seeing a reduction in the cases in line with the global scenario. If you can remember, about 2 weeks ago, we were hovering somewhere in the 900 range, and now it has come down from 700. Now, yesterday it was around 500. This should not be reassuring. So the problem is, like, if we have a super spreading virus right now. So with the capability of having large clusters, if we don't stick to the rules. So what happens is we develop some level of complacency when things are really good and you feel like, okay, we are coming under control. That's when we make the mistake. So we are seeing that among the people right now. So a lot of people are feeling free to walk around. They have big gatherings and we are just asking for trouble, just like how England did. Right? They had this opinion that they would never go into a shutdown and they thought they can control, and eventually ended up having a large outbreak, causing a massive close down. So in Sri Lanka, yes, we are trying not to have a breakdown of operations, but if it comes to that point, we will have to go to that. So the number of tests is another subject that people are worried about. So we are doing about 15,000 plus almost every day. So we have a capacity of 20,000. On some days it reaches 19,000 plus. And so even right now we are doing the number of tests, but the number of cases that are getting detected are quite low. So,
Okay, Ashan, I think we will go to the next page to answer questions in the next round. Can you please mute your mic, please? Somebody is, I think, mic is on. Okay, so now let's move on to the question round. So I would urge all the participants to please put their questions to the chat so that we can direct it to the panelists. So I'll ask, we'll go for the next round of questions, and then if there are any questions, we'll move on, or then we will move on to the second round, depending on the time available. So Professor Vatavella, I think you mentioned about the SMEs contribution. I mean, the huge population that are dependent on the SME workforce population. And we saw that there were a lot of redundancies, as well as certain industries were severely impacted. So what can we do to get them back to work? What are the opportunities available? How do you foresee this situation? Because unemployment is a big problem in the country already, let alone the impact of COVID, yeah?
Now, if you take one of the major sectors that were affected is the tourism sector.
yes.
Now, tourism is really dependent on the people coming from overseas. And I think the government is trying to get people from various countries to come. And then, so there is a large number that are involved in this sector. Maybe I think about 300 to 400,000 who are employed. But now most of these people coming would go maybe to the bigger hotels. So maybe they will be able to manage with these people who are coming. But really the problem is with the people who are maybe the self-employed people, and maybe the people in the rural areas, the small maybe eating houses and others that have been catering to the tourists. So how one can help them is something that we need to look at. One of the things that we can see now, of course, that we need to provide other opportunities for them. Now that's one area that we can look at. This means, of course, you need to have maybe skill development, maybe training and others. But government is going really, I think, giving a lot of prominence to agriculture. Now, if we can really concentrate on that agricultural sector, which will have to be planned, I think Dr. 𝐂𝐨𝐽𝐺𝐠 also mentioned about that, then we will be able to really not only give the maybe the employment to people, but also the supply chain that you are talking of, you know, because now the raw material will come, then you see you process it. Now then we were talking about the export houses. Now if these people are able to work with them, then they will be able to improve their quality, then their packing, and then of course export. Then the processing, like what was mentioned about the turmeric, then the processing will be done. So there is a supply chain coming, and the economy is planned. So I think there has to be a lot of planning, and maybe the government servants have to play a major role. You know, they can't just sit in their on their seats, and they can't warm the seats, you know. And the other thing that was mentioned was the use of technology. Now this technology is really something that can really make or break our country, like what Dr. 𝐕𝐺𝐺 mentioned, you know, because he told how Singapore came out of it, maybe the other countries, how they really were able to come out. Now even India, they have been able to make use of technology. Now their biggest exports, even the most of the people employed in the US are all Indians, so they have not done very well. So that means there has to be a drastic change in the education structure. You see today, if you really look at India, how they have done this is something that I told 10 years back, you know. I said that the universities should have colleges. It has to be a public-private partnership. That means, you see, if you take one university, either we can now we must go for technological universities. Now, yesterday I heard President said the KDU was a success. Then the same path you take for this technology. You go for technological university, but not government. Of course, government is the party. Now, so I will just give you an example, then you'll understand. Now you take Pune University in India. Now Pune University is a government university. How many colleges do they have? 600 colleges. So that means each of these colleges are catering to these people who are doing the same exam. It's the same syllabus, same exam, they are doing that. Then what happens, the numbers are there, they will be trained separately, because now what we are trying to do, we are putting government universities, we are trying to do everything. I don't think that is possible. If you want to develop this country, you must go for public-private. So that means if you do that, immediately you can solve this problem. You know, you can have a technological university which is owned by the government. They will do all the courses, everything. Then you have 100 colleges. Then immediately they will be able to do 10 to 50,000 people, train them. You know, now this is the way that we have to work. Because I can just tell you with the experience that I had in the BOI, today the apparel sector is the largest exporter. How did it become the largest exporter? At the BOI, first it was the Greater Colombo Economic Commission, it was changed to the BOI to make it take throughout the country. That change was made, and then we got the private investors to come and invest. Now they are the people who are really working, you know, because government has so much bureaucracy. They will take maybe, it's very difficult. 73 years we have been in this cycle, you know, you can't come out of it. So we need private sector, but government sector must do their job. Now, as I said, agricultural department, maybe the other ministries, the ITI, all these people must work. If they work means today, what is the important term? Value creation. each ministry that is given this money should show to the people, the society, what is the value they have created to society. If the government just takes this example, I think they can make everything successful. So I think it is really to work. If we work, we can do it and make everything possible, because our youth are people who can do very well. All our people have gone overseas. I think Dr. 𝐬𝐴𝐽𝐴𝐽𝐿 knows everything. He will be able to talk on this. But let us change, have a drastic change and make the country maybe better than Singapore.
I think that's a very strong
That is disabled.
I think what you said was very true. I mean, we've seen living examples. We see the public-private partnerships, the SLT, how we have seen the 𝐂𝐤𝐳𝐷 Sri Lanka, South Asia Gateway Terminal. All these are success stories, and we've seen that. So I think this is a valuable input. I mean, we all talk about it. We've been talking about for so long, but it's high time we get on with it and act on it. I think that's where we really lack focus. I think action is what is necessary. So I'll quickly move on to Dr. Wijayawardena in the interest of time, because Doctor, we have seen a lot of agencies, downgrading Sri Lanka. I mean, as you very rightly mentioned, the total debt repayment commitment, including the interest, is 6.9 billion, and then against a foreign reserve balance of 4.8, but out of that, liquid only is 4.2. So Fitch Rating had downgraded Sri Lankan government's long-term international borrowing from B- to CCC. So what are the implications for the general public? What are the implications of these downgrading of these agencies, and what steps should be taken immediately? I mean, you mentioned some of it, but what steps should we take as a country to get out of this cycle? Yeah.
Well, Gayani, the downgrading of Sri Lanka is not a new thing right from the very beginning. From 2007 onwards, when we went for the first sovereign rating, ours was a downgraded economy because we got the B category rating by all the three rating agencies, which is below the investment grade, which means, it has Sri Lanka was categorized as a country which has a very high probability of defaulting its loans. So those loans are called actually junk loans, junk bonds, and we were a junky country. From a junky situation, we have now been moved to a bigger junky situation. So so downgrading is not a new thing, but our reaction by our government policymakers had been totally overreactionary, because instead of learning from what has happened. Now I can give you an example. It is just like a man who has a diabetes, and the diabetes man goes to one lab and gets a lab report, and when it says his sugar level is high, immediately he finds fault in the lab. And he starts blaming the lab and giving him a wrong signal. And he goes to another lab, gets the same result, third lab, same result, fourth lab. So that is the type of response that we had throughout from it's not a new thing. From 2007 onwards, we had been blaming the rating agencies for keeping Sri Lanka at a lower rate without taking action to put our house in order. So that's the problem. Now, of course, we have been downgraded not only by the three rating agencies. All the investment advisors in the world, the leading ones, Citibank, as I told you, the today's two report by the Standard Chartered and Barclays Bank, all these leading investment advisors have downgraded us. For example, Citibank, about say 2 months ago, it came up with a very constructive report, positive report. It said, don't deny that you have a problem, because denial is not a strategy. That's the title of the report that they published. Now, today, the Standard Chartered and Barclays Bank have, rated Sri Lanka's sovereign bonds as underweight, giving, advising investors to get rid of them as fast as possible. So so what we must do is, as you have asked me how to improve our rating, first of all, these rating agencies as well as the other independent analysts who are analyzing Sri Lanka situation, they have found fault with the fragile fiscal situation of Sri Lanka throughout. It's not a new thing. It had happened from around 2000. During the entirety of the post-independence period, we had this problem, but it had become very critical after 2010. And the fragile fiscal situation had been the one that they had been that had been taken into account when the country's systems had been downgraded, because our revenue had been falling as a percentage of GDP, because even though the GDP was rising in nominal terms, in money terms, the government revenue has been falling as a percentage. But the government expenditure had been stubborn at the same rate, and as a result, budget deficit has been very high. So with high budget deficit, we had to borrow from abroad as well as from locally. And then the public debt problem had become a critical issue. And presently, if we take the present situation in Sri Lanka, if we take only the government budget, the revenue is insufficient for the government to repay the maturing debt and paying interest on that. So as a result, either we recycle it and adding more to the debt, because it's just like this, this, you had this Kolonnawa Kunukanda. So we are adding to this Kunukanda every day. So what we must do is, we must actually put our house in order so that the government budget should be made responsible. That's the one important point, Professor Lattola had, raised. Every ministry which is using taxpayers' money will have to come out with a value creation project. In fact, they have to, at the end of the year, not just, saying that we have spent that amount of money on this project, that amount of money on that project. It is not what we expect from society, because taxpayers are hard pressed. We are paying our taxes with great difficulty. So that is very scarce commodity. Using that scarce commodity, every ministry, I think we'll have to insist on that. We'll have to make it, I think, socialized, that every public sector institution that uses taxpayers' money will have to come out with a program of value creation for society, and they have to get credit for that at the end of the year. If they don't get credit at the end of the year, I think it is probably you have to close it down. So so to come out with the present debt crisis, Gayani, the two banks, the Standard Chartered and the Barclays Bank, they had taken very seriously whether Sri Lanka would go for an IMF type bailout. But the governor of the central bank had very clearly said in a press conference last week that Sri Lanka government is not willing to go to IMF because the IMF type of funding is contrary to the type of alternative economic policy being pursued by the government of Sri Lanka. So right now they are saying so, but of course I have, in my long experience in the central bank, I have seen politicians speaking like that. They blame IMF, and you may recall even in the previous Yahapalana government, immediately after they were sworn in, they said we are not going to go to IMF. And even when we recommended that Sri Lanka should go to IMF, they delayed it. By the time they delayed it, Sri Lanka's economic problem was acute. So eventually, the present government also might change its stance. That can happen. But the two reports that have been released today, they say without an IMF type bailout, the Sri Lanka will not be able to instill confidence in the investors. To instill the confidence in the investors, we must have someone who will give us a certificate. And why should that person give us a certificate? It will give us a certificate that we are following a policy strategy that will be working and effective in the medium to long run. But the type of this alternate economic policy being, pronounced by the governor of the central bank, nowhere it has been documented, and I don't know what it is. All we are doing right now, Gayan, is, we are using our eyeball and eardrum to learn about it. Because we hear something, one fellow says something, another fellow says another thing. And we see our eyeball and we see one in one place and the another thing, another place. So this eardrum and eyeball type of learning is not the thing that we have to do. The alternate economic strategy has to be documented, release it, debate it, discuss it. Then, of course, IMF and the world investors will look at it and they will accept it. So that is the thing that we have to do about the debt crisis. Otherwise, getting this soft facility of, say, 1 billion from China, 500 million from India will not help us, because SOP is again a short-term one. And we have to give Sri Lanka rupees to those guys to get the US dollars. And once we use the US dollars to repay the debt, when the SOP has to be reversed, we don't have dollars. And we have to go to the market and borrow again. So we are actually putting the country into a greater risk by going into SOP and, trying to finance it through SOP, the short-term facilities. I have to tell you, the next 12-month period, the total debt repayment commitment arising from both the public sector and the private sector is about $6 billion according to central bank data. We don't have enough foreign reserves, and as a result, which is actually, we may have to seek the assistance of the International Monetary Fund in order to come out this particular problem today.
Thank you, Doctor. I think we have to take hard calls, hard decisions. We have to face the reality, and that is what is very important. Let's hope that sanity will prevail and we will take action immediately, and then we will move in the right direction to revive the economy by getting us out of the woods. So time is also getting closer, and I've got few questions also, but I'll first ask one question from Dr. Ashan. Dr. Ashan, I think we've we see multiple health communication, getting into the masses through social media and official channels and all that. And general public doesn't seem to understand the way that they behave, and they are not disciplined. I mean, if you look at some of the countries around the world, I mean, they seem to be, you don't need to police them to discipline them. And at the same time, we also hear about vaccination, and we've got the first consignment of 500,000 jabs, and now there's a new theory saying that you don't need to do the second jab within 20 odd days. Would you like to quickly give us your thoughts on the current situation and current thinking from the medical perspective? Dr. Ashan? If he's not there, I will, I think it looks like we've lost him. So I'll then go into the question. I think there are a few questions. One question is about, has a study been done on provincial? Oh, okay. Ashan, yes, talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking about the current situation in Sri Lanka, right?
Okay.
In terms of the behavior, the main problem has been, I mean, it's not something that is just unique to Sri Lanka. We are having a behavior fatigue throughout the world. They're having an issue of behavior fatigue where people have been, going on in this pandemic for a year, and people are no longer receptive towards this health information and this behavior things that we are talking about. So the first thing is, because our people feel it more, because sometimes they feel like, okay, they are having a lot of hardships in their own lives, and on top of that, the government is asking them to stick to these rules, which are sometimes not practical for the poor people, because some of these things require additional resources. Like, for instance, when we ask them not to travel in the bus seated close together, it's not practical in some instances. But what happens is, if we don't stick by the rules, what will happen is we will eventually get into a place where the problem will get even worse. So we are talking about a few things when it comes to the situation. We are currently talking about the deaths, the number of cases. We have to move out of this. We have to start talking about the trends that are taking place. Like, where is the country heading on a weekly basis, probably. And then to go on and talk about the situations that created a higher spread, which events causes a spread, like which activities actually, because we have to get people towards the science of it and understand, okay, due to these reasons in this particular scenario, we had a spread like this. And then we need to appreciate the good work that has been done. Because sometimes what happens is we don't appreciate the good things that have been done, but we highlight all the negative things. So even at workplaces, the people who have been sticking to the rules, they need to be appreciated. And even the communication technique needs to be more personalized. We need to tell stories. We need to share experiences rather than giving directions. So the whole policing thing needs to take a more humane approach, and we need to go with the science. So about the vaccine, quickly, a lot of people have doubts whether this will be useful or whether it is not. It's definitely useful. It's one of the vaccines that have already been recommended by the WHO. Out of the 4, the Covishield vaccine produced by the Serum Institute of India is one of the active ones and one of the good ones. So we are lucky to have it right now. But several issues are there. People are asking, okay, you are getting side effects. Yes, we do get it, and it's well documented for every single vaccine that has been produced up to now. So it's something normal. It's showing that your body is reacting to the vaccine, and there's nothing to worry about it. And we all went through it. I went through it personally, and it was there for about 24 hours, and that's it. And then about the second jab, The second jab is necessary, but the new protocol says you don't need it within 4 weeks. You can wait up to 12 weeks. Therefore, we have a time period of 3 months to get the second vaccine, and that's why the 500,000 vaccines are being given to every possible person right now.
So thank you very much. I think that's quite insightful. I think maybe a lot of people have fears, so it will really allay the fears among a lot of misinformation that is especially there in social media. So there are a few questions. I'll quickly pick up one or two questions. One is, has a study been done on provincial supply chain risks and a management program to mitigate losses and waste of MSMEs? Would you like to answer that question, Professor Vatawala?
Yeah, actually, now what I mentioned is now we are really trying to make a forward march, because that's why we recommended this export house. I'll just give you a brief of what we are really meaning, because rather than people looking at it, it's the main purpose of an export house is to making products or service export ready and having access to international markets, which are the main deterrents for SMEs to become exporters or indirect exporters. Exporter houses therefore can play a role, act as an intermediary for SMEs, or to play the role of a buyer exporter, function as a coordinator between cultivators, manufacturers, service providers, indirect exporters, overseas buyers, provide storage facilities such as cold rooms, bulk transport facilities, improve SME understanding of the export market and process, spot suitable market opportunities. So these are some of the things. What I feel is, I think surveys are important, but today what we are having is the doers are not there. People who can make a decision, who can take things forward are really not there. So that's why we need to do that if we are to really make a success.
Okay. Again, another question on farmers produce without knowing the end price. So guaranteed pricing is another issue that we have. And we have so many intermediaries and we don't have cold chain. Luckily, I saw a news item recently now. They're continuing to build in Dabul a cold chain facility, which we've been talking about post-harvest losses for the past so many years. Decades we are talking about it. And at least if you look at value addition rather than just exporting commodities in this country, I think we will remove our export basket to a different level, and that will really enable us to gain much needed foreign currency as well. So in the interest of time, I think most of the questions are related and that most of the panelists have addressed. So let's move on to the final round. I would like all the panelists to give your final remarks. How do we, in your own way, what are the most important things that we need to revive the economy to face the new normal with confidence? Over to you, Professor Vatawala.
No, since we are now involved with the Miloda Academy of Financial Studies, I think I would like to maybe tell them that they have to really play a major role here, because we are wanting to maybe educate, professionalize, build the skills of the government sector. So we will certainly, from my side, I can certainly give you all the support to do that, because if that is done, I think half our problems are sorted, because then we can make them understand what the people of this country will need. So let us do, because that is called continuing professional development. All our professional bodies are doing that. So I think let us do that, and I am ready to get the people that are required to help them in this project.
Thank you, Professor. I think that's valuable. I think partnerships are the ones that will really help us to move forward. Dr. Vijayavardhan, over to you.
Well, I think the main thing that we should do, Gayani, today is we have to admit that we have a problem. Then only we would be able to find the solution. And denying that we have no problem, and also saying that we know the technique of resolving whatever the problem that might come will not help us. So to get the entire nation on a similar footing to address the acute economic problem we are facing in Sri Lanka today, we have to get the support of everybody. It's from the man in the street to the top man in the president's house. Everybody will have to make a supreme sacrifice in order to make turn around Sri Lanka today, because this is just like what we are experiencing today is just like like Japan after the Hiroshima and atomic bomb explosion. because we have been completely destroyed now. So we have to recover. To recover it, we don't have, people of this ethnicity or that ethnicity, this language or that language, this religion or that religion. We'll have to forget about all these human differences and take all Sri Lankans as Sri Lankans and move forward as a joint force in order to come out of this particular problem. So that is the advice that I can give right now.
That's quite profound. I think that's what is important, understanding the problem, and then we can really resolve it. Okay, thanks. Okay, Dr. Ashan, over to you. Your final thoughts.
So from the health side, what we require the most is for people to be with us and stay with science. Right now, we have a tendency where people are believing in mythical things and people are having actually suspicion about the science itself that has kept us alive for all this time. So I think the top tier of the society is actually going along with science, whereas the bottom tier, that is at the highest risk of getting the complications of this, are actually not moving with the science. So therefore, we have a very big responsibility of what is being trickled down, especially through social media. So the information is first captured by the top tier people. And then once we start sharing some information without spending time to really think whether this is accurate or not, we are doing a lot of harm at the bottom of the food chain. So therefore, one thing that we need to take home from this thing is that when you share something, remember that you are doing a responsible act, because there are few things you can do to start with. Where did this message or this information originate from, right? Who was the author? Check at least the date when it was published. Likewise, if you can find that information, just copy and paste it into Google and check what other people have said about it. And if you can't even find the answer, we have a hotline operated by the Health Promotion Bureau, 1999. So on that hotline, we have a doctor with MBBS, minimum qualification, answering that hotline in all 3 languages 24/7. So if you have a doubt, don't just post something on social media or start spreading a rumor. Just call us. You can get an opinion or you can get a better view of it. So that's one of the main things we want to get through to the society, because if we have to come out of this problem, we have to do it together. But we have to believe in science if we have to come out of it. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think the central theme across all 3 panelists, the message that all of you are giving is we need to work together. Collaboration is key, especially in a crisis situation. I think we've proven that when you're in a crisis, if you don't work together and you don't accept that there is a problem, you don't get into the action mode, you will still eternally talking about it until the cows come home. So that's the problem that we are currently in. I think this is a call to action for all the government officials. I'm not saying there are people who are really working, but I'm saying everybody must get together, and with the other sectors, the private sector, academia, and all these people must get together. And Miloda therefore has a huge role to play because you predominantly cater to the needs of the government sector. You have few private sector officials. So now Professor Wattavala has already given his support. I'm sure we all can work together and get us out of the wood and revive our economy to face the new normal with confidence. So thank you so much, all of you, for your valuable time on a Saturday. And also I'm glad that although we had 33 participants, but they were all there till the end, and maybe those who really wanted attended it. That means they would have definitely taken something on a Saturday. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Mihimali, for working behind the scene to make this event a success. Thank you from my side. And our final Miloda Life with New Normal series webinar would be held on education. We will be having it in the next one. So thank you so much for all the participants who attended today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri. Thanks a lot.
Yes, madam. With that, we have come to the end of the session. I take this opportunity to thank our distinguished panelists, Professor Lakshman Wattavala, Dr. 𝐷𝐞𝐳𝐸𝐬𝐴, and Dr. Ashan Patrana, and our moderator, Mrs. 𝐂𝐜𝐴LYS, for enlightening us with their knowledge. It was a wealth of information. We hope that the audience was inspired. Also, we request you to submit your feedback about the webinar, the link we have shared with you in the chat. A big thank you to the Miloda team, who was instrumental in making this webinar a success. Last but not least, thank you to the audience who graced our webinar with your presence. We hope you will take some of the suggestions on board and look at things differently in the new normal. You can watch the recorded webinar on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you. Hi, Ranjit. How are you?
All right, keeping fine.
Good, good, good. Nice to see you after a long time. Right,
See you.
see you then. Bye.
Ranjit, you had asked two questions, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course you know the answer. No need for asking those two questions.
No, areas can't.
Ranjit, you are muted. Ranjit.
Other countries actually, they specify, if I name Vietnam, they specify pepper which area, what is the total.